What now are you seeing in smaller companies, areas that you can invest in making sure that the cyber threats can be defeated?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, guys, by the way. Let's see. One of the great things about cybersecurity that we've enjoyed is it's very resilient to economic upturns and downturns. So, in fact, if you take a look at a couple of the CIOs surveys that have come up, cyber is one of the areas that is actually increasing in spend during economic downturns because everybody's worried about risk. That's kind of one thread, which always makes cyber very, very exciting as an investment vehicle. The other thread is these threats are ever evolving. So the adversaries don't sit still. They're constantly inventing new threat vectors. And as a result, some of the old security controls have to be reinvented on a constant basis. And of course, with the emerging new threats, there has to be new innovative companies that are going to emerge to counteract those threats. So as a result, from a startup perspective, venture perspective, is a very interesting area to invest in. I would argue with the current economic downturn, if you look at some of the public equities today as well, and if you took a look at some of the multiples of revenues, multiples of EBITDA, it'll make cyber very, very exciting to invest in. So, we like this sector quite a bit, of course.
Barmak, we're interested in where the dollars and the energy is coming from. When I was at CES in January, which seems like a lifetime ago now, Jen Easterly, the director of CISA, basically made an appeal to corporate America saying, do more, invest earlier in cybersecurity, integrate cybersecurity tools at the moment you design a new product or piece of software. Is that where the energy is coming from in the form of your LPs? I'm just curious who's backing you to make these investments.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things Jen pointed out and you're pointing out, which is probably the most important thing in cyber's always been thought of as an afterthought. If you take a look at the applications, for instance, applications are developed without security in mind during the software development lifecycle. And we're seeing a shift happening, especially over the last 10, 15 years. There's an area called shift left you probably have heard, which is equipping software developers so they can build security into the fabric of the application during the assembly process of the application. It's one of the only areas that you can build a critical asset and think of security as an afterthought. It's incredibly inefficient. So to Jen's point, software security, especially, and security in general, has to be thought of during the assembly process of any artifact. It's certainly one theme or one area that we see. There are many other themes that we're investing in. When we look at our LP base, they kind of share the same excitement and enthusiasm. They view cyber as very resilient to economic upturns and downturns. We're focused in the early stages of investing, and I would argue during economic downturns is a really good time to create companies and hope you can catch the upturn cycle when the equity capital markets come back. And so the LPs share that enthusiasm. They think the stage of our investing is pretty exciting. They think it's pretty exciting. And that's why they.
Hey, Barmak, we're looking at your portfolio companies here. Concentric's one name that jumps out. How is artificial intelligence impacting how you invest?
Yeah, definitely. So I would argue a couple of areas. One, AI has made the business of threat detection, incident response a lot more automated. In the case of Concentric, they focus on data security. So what they go after is they look at unstructured data that passes through your organization, either through your Slack channels, Office 365, Confluent, and there's an inadvertent risk exposure of that unstructured data to the outside world. Without artificial intelligence, identifying that unstructured data and the risk exposure is almost impossible. And so you can apply AI to areas of data access and governance. You can apply AI to automating threat detection, incident response, and removing the scarce human capital resources that are available so they can focus on higher important things. Having said that, though, you can't rely on AI to completely automate your business. There's a lot of business context that goes into understanding whether you're a financial services company or an insurance company or a healthcare company. So it can take you 80% there, 85% there. The last 10 to 15%, it still requires some human touch to sort of apply the business context to what you're trying to go after.
You mentioned varied industries that deploy cyber needs. What about the companies building all of this, Barmak? Are you investing primarily in American-built companies? Is this truly global?
From a cyber perspective, I still argue the epicenter for a lot of innovation is here in America. I would say Israel has sort of come up over the last 5 to 7 years as a new epicenter. There's a lot of innovation that comes out of Israel. partly out of Unit 8200, which is part of the IDF. So the vast majority you see between those two areas. EMEA and EU specifically is obviously coming together in the last 3 to 5 years. My previous company, Alien Vault, was a company that was started out of Spain and had moved their headquarters to the US. So, but I would say America and Israel are kind of the two main epicenters.